Hello. G'day, Owen here again with the beginnings of a new project. Difficult to tell, but this is actually a terrain project. So my orcs come from a little lovely seaside town called Orkness. The idea here being that they've overrun an imperial resort world, and things in the Empire being so terrible that their idea of a resort world is, well, the English seaside circa 1950. Being an Australian and living within 20 minutes of world-class surf beaches, I find this idea absolutely hilarious. So my orcs have taken over an imperial seaside resort probably called Skegness. They've renamed it Orkness, and that's why I'm building boats. I've got to have something to put in the water by the sea, so this is the first one. This is the one that's finished. Built this last weekend, started it Saturday, finished it Sunday. About 4 hours working it all up. This one has obviously been painted. This is a completely plasticard model, plasticard and plastic tube. The basic hull shape built out of 1mm plasticard, then covered with further, I think it was 1mm again, might have been 0.75 plasticard to give the basic shape, and then the plating added over the top because things didn't line up perfectly, and I like the way plating looks anyway. And then of course the superstructure built the same way, although it doesn't have very much plating over it. There's a bit of a door there to get in. The door handle there is part of a press stud. Always like those for those big sort of turny wheel things that you see in submarine movies. Big exhaust there, and of course, couldn't resist a bad pun, the ship is of course called the Orca. So it's probably not the biggest of boats, but it's got to go off and find an imperial shark called Bruce to victimise. So this is the first one. There are more. Bamf. And this is the beginnings of the next one. It's again a sort of tugboat size thing similar to the Orca, but this time I am building it so that I can cast it in resin and make duplicates. That will speed things up a lot, particularly because of a certain plan I'll tell you about in a moment. This one, unlike the Orca, based on a wooden core, pine, just cut out there and rounded off with sanding disc and so forth, just because I find it hard to do curved shapes in plasticard, get them all to match up and be regular. So just a simple pine core which I've then plated over with plasticard, and it's got the plating and riveting and all that good orky stuff going on there all the way around. And you will of course note that there's a big blank bit in the middle with slot A written on it. What's that for, you may ask? Bamf again. So these are superstructures. The idea here being that you can slot different superstructures into the boat, also obviously making it easier for casting. So I've got here the deck house, wheelhouse, whatever you want to call it, with the engines, and two different kinds of hatch. This one is not finished yet. That's designed to have coal or something in it. This one hinges open. Not absolutely finished on that one yet either, but they will all fit into that slot perfectly happily. The two hatch ones will look a little silly on a ship that size, but well, there's a good reason for them. Bamf! And this is the barge hull that I've been making. It doesn't necessarily have to be a barge at the moment, being a barge, because it's got the two hatches in there. Built for real, it'll probably just have two copies of the same hatch. It looks a bit better that way. But these slot in to the same size slot. It's a 4x7cm standard slot, which means that you can slot this deck house in here, and then maybe put this one on the front there. And you can make it into a little ship instead of a cargo hulk, barge I mean. So we've got some nice variety here, so I can build a whole lot of different things. The deck house was more built for the first one there. It looks a bit better, makes more sense. And the idea here being that I'll have a fleet of tugs and barges that can be used to move things around. Most of the time just used for terrain, they'll just be sitting beside the dock. But there is a bit of a plan going on here for something special. Not something I'm going to show you, I'm just repositioning it so I can put the Orca back in. What I am thinking of doing is there is an event coming up called Little Wars. That's either in the beginning of June or July. It's one of those J months and I can't remember which. Here in Victoria. It's actually in Melbourne, Moorabbin Town Hall, I think. And it's a war games event that's been running for years, and they like to have demo tables and things like that, and participation games. And what I am planning is to strong arm one of my friends into building enough non-orc stuff, and we're going to do an orc seaborne invasion. So I'm going to have a whole lot of ships with my orcs on them, and they'll trundle onto the battlefield, probably as reserves. I haven't really thought about the scenario yet, to be honest. I've just thought about how well it will look, because, well, that's the thing I care about the most. So we're going to have these little boats tugging barges full of orcs. They'll disgorge them when they go to the beach. Orcs will go everywhere. I am working on an orc warship as well. It's a bit bigger than this one, but it's not very far advanced at all, so I haven't brought it out. I've also got another of these modules which you can plug in onto any of these hulls, except Orca, of course, it's not modular. You can plug into any of the hulls, and it's got a turret on it, so we've got some weapons that we can put on onto any of them. It actually makes sense on this because it's got a sort of driver's position right at the front, but you could also put it on this hull and have a superstructure. Probably going to build a second different superstructure, obviously. Looking towards getting molds made probably next weekend. Not absolutely certain. There's a few things that need to be done first. It hasn't taken me a huge amount of time to make these, but then again, it's been the weekend. You know, I've got to go back to work tomorrow, so things will probably slow down then. But yeah, there we go. That's the beginning of my orc fleet to go with Orc Ness. Orc Ness I'm going to be working on in the coming months. Got some interesting plans for that. I've already basically got a harbour already built that was originally built for playing Mortime, the old Warhammer Fantasy skirmish gang warfare kind of game. But I'll be using that board and then putting various buildings on it, you know, run down boarding houses that the orcs have taken over, and maybe a pier and a bandstand and a holiday camp. I've also been thinking of doing all of my objectives up as those little sort of children's ride-on things that you put a coin in out the front of supermarkets and they rock back and forth and make noises. I was thinking of making all of the objectives out of those, or maybe dodgem cars or something. So look, we'll see how we go, but that's it for this week's update. More next week probably. See you then.